few minutes of delay. Rupam, let's start with the halwa ceremony.
Halwa ceremony? This is a pre-budget analysis event, I guess.
Oh, you don't know about halwa ceremony?
No, please enlighten us.
Okay, sure. So every year, about a week before the finance minister presents the budget, a halwa ceremony is held. A halwa is prepared and then served at the venue where the budget is printed. The ceremony marks the commencement of a lock-in period for officials before the budget papers go into printing. Till this budget is presented, all the officials involved in the printing of the budget are locked inside the finance ministry premises with no access to the outside world or any communication devices. So that's where the halwa ceremony comes from.
Well, that's an interesting story, but I have a more interesting one. The budget were always presented at 5 p.m. in India, and you know why? Because the document had to be presented simultaneously both in India and London when we started the budget. But surprisingly, we took this 5 p.m. time until 1999 when Yashwant Sinha presented the budget for the first time at 11 a.m. in the morning. Isn't it interesting?
Well, I still feel my effect was more interesting. But moving ahead, ladies and gentlemen, namaste and a very good morning to all of you. I, Shreyasi Verma, along with my co-host Rupam Datta, are going to be your hosts for the event today. We feel extremely glad as we welcome you all to our 4th edition of Pre-Budget Analysis 2024. And to those who have traveled from outside the state, first of all, thank you so much, and we extend a warm welcome to God's own country, Kerala. In the previous years, pre-budget analysis have played a very crucial role in shaping government decisions. Today, we are here to listen to our distinguished panelists to share their insights on what 2024 budget may have in store for us. But before we get started with the main agenda, we would like to commence the session with a traditional lamp lighting ceremony. The lighting of the lamps symbolizes the dispelling of darkness and welcoming the wisdom and knowledge. So we would like to invite all our distinguished guests on the stage for the lamp lighting ceremony. We kindly request everyone to please stand for the prayer. Thank you so much, everybody. During the safety issues, we'll just put off the light for now and we'll proceed ahead. Alright, so thank you so much, everybody. That has definitely set the context for the rest of the day. We are all good to go. And I would now like to request Professor Joshi Joseph, Chairperson Kochi Campus, to kindly come on the stage and officially kick off the event.
Good morning to you all. Good morning to IIM Kozhikode. Good morning to IIM Kozhikode Kochi Campus. Dignitaries on the stage and off stage, Mr. George Alexander Muthoot, Managing Director of Muthoot Group, Dr. V.K Vijayakumar, Chief Investment Strategist, CRISIL, Dr. Mridul Saggar, Professor IIM Kozhikode and former Executive Director of Reserve Bank of India, Mr. Nitin Nair, Senior Vice President, ONDC, Mr. Dr. V.K Joshi, Chief Economist, CRISIL, who will be joining us online. And Dr. O.P. Mall, Executive Director of RBI, he is here with us for the program. Thank you very much, sir, for making it possible. Professors of IIM Kozhikode, faculty members and students of other institutes who are nearby, and students and participants from companies. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you all to IIM Kozhikode's Kochi campus for the 4th edition of Pre-Budget Analysis event. Today we are honored to have the country's eminent financial experts, economists and dignitaries with us, whose contributions help in shaping India's economic future. This event holds a unique importance as the discussions and insights we generate here have the potential to influence the government of India as the crucial suggestions for the upcoming budget. In fact, the highlights from the previous editions were acknowledged by the government through social media. Deliberations today are not just academic or professional exercises, they are integral to the economic decisions that will impact our nation in the years to come. For our students, our Kochi campus executive MBA students, it's a rare and invaluable opportunity to engage with and learn from the brightest minds in the field, witnessing firsthand the complexities and responsibilities of economic policy making. I encourage everyone to participate actively, share your insights, and make this a day of profound and impactful discussions. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words.
Okay, without further ado, let's kickstart with today's agenda. Before we get started, we would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest speakers, Chairperson Kochi campus, distinguished panelists, professors, and all of you who have joined us. Further, I would like you all to thank our sponsors for supporting this event. We have our gold sponsors, Vigaland Developers, our silver sponsors, Srirose Developers, Forcom Infratech Systems, and South Indian Bank. Moving on, we have a packed agenda filled with expert insights, analysis, discussions. The budget is not just a financial statement, it's a blueprint of India's economic future. It impacts every aspect of our lives, from healthcare, education, infrastructure, and economic growth.
That's right. In fact, by analyzing the budget before it's announced, we can gain a deeper understanding of the potential impacts and prepare ourselves to engage with it more effectively. Today, we will cover a range of topics including economic outlook, sectoral impacts, and policy changes, etc. And we are fortunate to have some of the best minds in the field today with us to share important insights about Budget 2024.
We'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists. One by one, we'll welcome and present the bouquet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. George Alexander Muthoot, Managing Director of Muthoot Finance. Born into an esteemed Muthoot business family in Kerala, he is a chartered accountant qualified with the first rank in Kerala. He has a bachelor degree in commerce from Kerala University, where he was a rank holder and a gold medalist. He was also awarded the Times India Group Business Excellence Award in Customized Financial Service in March 2009. He served as the chairman of Kerala Non-Banking Finance Companies Welfare Association from 2004 to 2007. His insights for understanding the gold loan business and professional zeal has been the catalyst behind the company's meteoric rise to present level of being India's largest gold loan company. He continues to lead Muthoot Finance with a commitment to innovation, customer service, and sustainable growth. Let's give a warm welcome to George Alexander Muthoot.
Next on the panelist, we have with us Dr. V.K. Vijayakumar, who is the Chief Investment Strategist at Geojit Financial Services. He has previously served as the Head of Economics Department at Sri Krishna College, Guruvayur, an expert member on the working group on NBFCs for Kerala's Planning Board, and lectured at CEU in Budapest. He holds a MA and PhD in Economics from Calicut University. Known for his regular media articles and TV discussions on economic issues, Dr. Vijayakumar frequently addresses investor meets, offering advice to both new and seasoned investors. Dr. V.K. Vijayakumar has presented numerous papers, and his paper, Financial Innovations, Boons and Disasters was judged the best paper in the international conference held at Loyola College, Chennai in January 2009. He is also a certified trainer from the UTI Institute of Capital Markets. With four books, 210 articles, and numerous seminar presentations to his name, Dr. V.K Vijayakumar's work is featured in major publications like The Hindu, Business Line, Economic Times, and more. Please join me, give a warm welcome to Dr. V.K Vijayakumar, sir.
We'll take the opportunity to welcome Dr. Mridul Saggar. Dr. Mridul Saggar is a professor of practice in the Indian Institute of Management, Kozhikode. He was earlier the Executive Director, Reserve Bank of India, overseeing the central bank's monetary policy and economic research functions. He was also one of the 6 members of the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee, MPC. He also served as a Chief Economist of Kotak Institutional Equities during 2008 to 2010. Currently, he is also an on-board and expert of International Monetary Fund to render expert service to IMF member countries in the area of monetary policy as part of IMF missions. A PhD from IGIDR and a mid-career fellow from Princeton University, he has several publications in national and international journals and has taught and delivered guest lectures at various academic institutes in India and abroad. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Mridul Saggar.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to take opportunity to welcome Mr. Dharmakirti Joshi, sir. So Joshi sir was supposed to be here today, but due to a medical emergency, he was not able to fly to Kochi. But we are fortunate enough that he is able to join us through online mode, and we're going to continue the discussion through that medium. With over 35 years of experience in economic research and consultancy, Joshi sir's career began in the National Council of Applied Economic Research, NCAER, where he spent 11 years. He was a member of the working group of savings for the 12th five-year plan. He is currently a member of the working group on revision of wholesale price index set up by the Government of India. He is chairman of Economic Affairs Group of Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and member of Economic Affairs Council of Confederation of Indian Industry and IMC's Industry and Trade Committee. Mr. Joshi holds a master's degree in economics and has attended a program on macroeconomic policy and management at Harvard University. He was also a visiting scholar to the Economic Research Unit of University of Pennsylvania. Let's give a warm welcome to Dharmakirti Joshi sir, who has joined us today online.
We would like to take this opportunity to call our distinguished moderator today, Mr. Nitin Kumar Nair. Mr. Nitin Nair is a Senior Vice President at ONDC and leads the Network Expansion Initiative Pan-India for Mobility, Transportation and Travel, along with overall South India business. Previously, he held roles with Nissan Motors, Uber and EY, where he managed multiple teams solving for connected cars, tech-enabled urban mobility and business advisory across India, the Middle East, Europe and Oceania. As an industry and function leader, he has been instrumental in ONDC forging successful collaborations with various central and state government entities, large technology platforms and startups. He is an alumnus of the University of Pune and our own IIM Kozhikode. Give it a warm welcome to Mr. Nitin Nair.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming all our panelists and moderator on the stage now with a huge round of applause. Okay, now I'd like to turn it around to our moderator of the day, Mr. Nitin Nair. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Budget, new government, hopes, aspirations, anticipation. All those words, here. So we're going to try and use these 90 minutes to make, some useful deliberations discuss what may be pertinent, especially in the context of 2047 with the government's mission of being a developed economy. India, $4 trillion economy, already on the cusp of being the third largest, if not already, and slowly knocking at the doors of the largest two. Yet, still a developing country. Right? Most countries at our size are of a size of economy are fairly developed, but we're still very early in our life cycle. Many large macroeconomic challenges, unemployment, infrastructure,
Recording in
exports.
progress.
In the context of all of this budget coming from the current government, 2 stable terms, the third term also seems to be upcoming to a stable term hopefully, right? And therefore an opportunity to continue the 7 to 8% GDP growth. We continue to be the largest, large economy growth, the fastest growing large economy in the world. But yet to hit the goals that we have set for ourselves, we need to grow faster, be more meaningful, and be a lot more inclusive in the growth than we are today. And therefore, it is going to be an extremely large leap that collectively as a country that we would need to take. So in that context, let me get started. And maybe I'll go to Mr. V.K Joshi. Sir, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? No, I'm saying, can Mr. Joshi hear us? Sure, so I think we'll start with the slightly overarching question, right? What are the major challenges that the current economy faces? What kind of government policies can help address those? We can start with jobs, unemployment, the labor market is fragmented. Also, is there a room for allocation in rural schemes and urban housing, right? So maybe I'll start off with Mr. Vijayakumar to take this question and just set context for the rest of us, and then we can continue.
Well, as you rightly pointed out in your initial remarks, in macroeconomic scenario is pretty good. As far as growth is concerned, we are in a very sweet spot. And the macros also, like a fiscal deficit, current account deficit, foreign exchange reserves, revenue growth, all these are good, except perhaps our debt to GDP ratio. All of the macro indicators are actually in very fine shape. Actually, the last quarter of financial year 24, our current account deficit turned a surplus. So that is a very desirable situation. Naturally, for FY25, the current account deficit is likely to be 1%, an ideal situation. But fiscal deficit is slightly on the higher side because of the massive fiscal stimulus that we had to do after the COVID recession. But then the fiscal consolidation path has been firmly set, and we are very much on that path. The fiscal deficit for FY26, the target is 4.5, and this year's target, FY25 target, according to the interim budget, is 5.1%, perhaps the government can do better than the projection because of the RBI bullets of 2.1 lakh crores, which is roughly 1 lakh crores more than what was estimated in the budget. So this is one area. Since you mentioned the word challenge, I would say that fiscal consolidation continues to be a challenge because our debt to GDP ratio is around 81%, which is not very comfortable for an emerging economy. For a developed economy, you can afford to shoot past 100%, 120, 150. Well, many countries we know that, even Japan has even more than 200. But we are vulnerable in that area, and therefore the government, I hope, will not compromise on fiscal consolidation. Then the other big challenge is our job report card. The economy is growing, as you rightly mentioned in your initial remarks. If we take the last 3 years, India has been the fastest growing large economy, 9.1% GDP growth in 21-22, followed by 7.2%, and last year 8.2%, even though 8.2% is a little bit of a statistical aberration. because of the aberration in the GDP deflator, but 7.2% GVA I would think is a better number. But then this year also, according to RBI, the projection is 7.2% GDP growth. So that means we will be growing at 7% for 4 years consecutively, and no other country comes near India as far as growth is concerned. So growth, we are doing good, but the real challenge is on job generation. As far as job generation is concerned, things are not pretty. So our focus has to be on massive job generation, and also to make our GDP growth sustainable, because growth with financial stability acquires a lot of importance, particularly in the present context of unexpected geopolitical developments impacting the global economy. So that would be my initial remarks to your question.
Joshi sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, did you catch the question? It was an overarching overall question. Would you want me to repeat the question to you?
No, I broadly heard the question, so I think let me not repeat what has already been said. So clearly, I think there is no doubt that the growth, we've surprised on the upside as far as growth is concerned, and I think it's not only what was projected by CSO earlier, but even the analyst expectations have been exceeded. And I think the other part is in this global environment where you have too many risks playing out, and which have so far not impacted us. We all know that there are a variety of risks starting from Russia, Ukraine to Middle East to tariff wars which are going on, and all of these have potential to disrupt in a very serious way. But none of that disruption has played out till now, and hasn't impacted our growth. But we need to have buffers for them because this is a very unusual environment. So from that angle, I think having a strong growth, having external buffers like current account deficit, and also having a domestic buffer in the sense of reducing fiscal deficit, provide a lot of support to the system. So I think having said that, I also want to point out two things. I mean, if you notice, soon after the elections, the first thing that was done was the announcement of houses for 30 million people in urban and rural areas. So that gives you a signal that I think there is need to support the economy. At least the people who haven't been able to participate in the growth process. Sorry, excuse me. And the second, I think, thing was that we saw the cabinet more or less was the same. The portfolios didn't change much, so that kind of shows continuity. So I think while most of the things are positive, let me highlight some issues also, which probably budget will have to tackle in one way or the other. The first is food inflation, and food inflation has been extremely high and very persistent, and it's coming in the way of central bank cutting rates, not only in India but probably likely in some other Asian economies as well. So, and the cause of food inflation is, I think, it is weather, etc., but it can be addressed more through fiscal policy, not by monetary policy. So that is number one issue that I think falls in and particularly with the climate changing. Second, I think issue is on the employment, and I think we already saw some action on that front by announcement of 30 million houses. I think construction is a labor-intensive activity. Then I think the other thing I wanted to point out was that the balance of public and private investment in the overall investment lift is still missing. I think the uptick in investment has largely been led by the public sector, which is infra-led, and also by the household sector, which are buying houses. I think that's what the data shows till 22-23. Private corporate sector has been a little slow in investing, so how do you revive that? I mean, is there something that needs to be done? So that's also a question for the budget. And finally, I think I need to point out that the private consumption, which is the bulwark of the economy, grew at half the rate of GDP in 23-24 at only 4%. and this is the slowest rate of growth in 2 decades. So I think that also raises some of the issues for the budget to address. And so let me, I think, stop there. And I also want to thank IIM Kozhikode for Kochi for inviting me. I'm extremely sorry that I couldn't make it. I think I had a medical emergency I can't fly for a week at least. So, but I think greetings to all the fellow panelists and to everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Joshi, thank you. Really sorry to hear about the health emergency, but thank you for taking time out and still joining us. You've raised some very pertinent questions, but I'll come back to them. I'm just going around all the panelists again. May I invite Mr. Muthoot to give his opening thoughts on this, overarching theme?
Thank you. Good morning to all. I think I will start from where Dr. Vijayakumar left, and also some of the points which Mr. Joshi also said. Most important, I think, is employment generation. Employment generation at every stage, every part of the country, whether it is rural, urban, etc. I think that is most important. Of course, Indian GDP is growing, but is it really going into the hands of the lower strata of people? That is what we need to look at. And once it goes there, then definitely when the purchasing power of all Indians, or most of the Indians, increase, then consumption will also go up. What drives all economies, maybe not only Indian economy, maybe the Western economy, is really consumption. If you see some data which is coming from the US, etc., inflation, the consumer sentiment, etc., most are based on consumption. They have statistics, of course. We don't have real statistics. There in the Western world, the consumption is fully tracked because most of the spending is through digital or online or through the banking channel. So they know exactly what is the consumption, how much consumption has happened. If consumption goes down, they feel the economy has also come down. So for us to grow the economy, we need consumption also at every stage. And before consumption, how do we put money into the hands of the people? So first, money should go there. Second, consumption should happen. Of course, as we go forward, I will also add to some of our suggestions on this. Recently, Muthoot as a company, we being a large player in the gold loan market, we were also invited by the finance minister 2 weeks back for a pre-budget discussion. All the finance secretaries were there, or many industries, associations, the mutual funds, the banks, the NBFCs, we were also represented. Maybe 10 of us from the one side and maybe 10 from the finance minister, deputy finance minister, and maybe about 10 senior secretaries. They also have the same issues. They also feel that they have also come up with consultations. They want consultations from the ground level. From the ground level, what is happening? In fact, yesterday, I was with the Reserve Bank of India in their office and also with SEBI. The SEBI Executive Director specifically called us to actually find out or get inputs from us on how to improve the debt market, the retail debt market. There is no depth in the retail debt market in India. When you see retail debt market, that is the non-convertible debentures or the bonds, etc., it is not being the participation by individuals very low, very, very low. Not only that, there is no depth in the market, there is very little trading also. Whereas in all external or maybe Western countries, the debt market, the retail debt market is very good. It means that the public at large are not subscribing to the debt. That is definitely important. One or two initiatives had been taken by the government to see that the government securities are also will go into retail, but it has not really picked up. So they were actually picking our minds because Muthoot, again, we are the largest issuer of non-convertible debentures in the retail market. No other company has that retail market depth. So they wanted to know from us what are the challenges. Of course, there were quite a bit of small challenges which if addressed can actually address this side also. So overall, the finance ministry, the regulators, they are also taking all steps to see how to have an economy, participation by everybody. That is the watchword here. Participation by everybody, even the retail. So putting money in the hands of people, making things more democratic to all the people is what the government is trying to do, and I'm sure they should be taking steps to that. We have also given some suggestions on all these fronts to them. We will discuss that as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muthoot. Some very fundamental points there. Employment generation is critical, money in the hands of people, which will help fuel consumption, and of course the enhancement and improvement in retail debt market. Right? I would want to now take this question to Shri Mridul Saggar, get his opening views, and then we can get into specific points for further discussion.
Okay, on any particular aspect or just a general remark?
The general one first, sir.
So I think we are on point where this budget would actually lay down the sort of priorities for the new government's new term, whatever you want to call it or not. And it's very important to see how they use this opportunity and whether there is any regress from their commitment to fiscal consolidation is what worries me. So, to my mind, I think the government did exceedingly well in recent budgets in bringing fiscal situation under control. The pandemic shock was a huge shock. When you have central government's fiscal deficit to GDP ratio crossing 9%, it's a cause for a worry. Now, they seem to have recovered from that. The consolidation initially looked a bit slow, but at least in the interim budget, they clearly set a very pronounced path for fiscal consolidation. And mind you that basically if you do hard metrics on debt sustainability, to my mind India's debt was not sustainable at the point of time of COVID, hitting 89% of GDP. But now having brought down to 83%, of course the benefit came because growth recovery was there, and you were mentioning 9% growth. That was on a low base, but it did help all that sort of bring the debt numbers under control. Now, when the government budgeted a delta in the interim budget from basically roughly 5.8 at that point of number was the revised estimate. The provisional estimates have actually shown it is 5.6% of GDP now, and that 0.2% of GDP is extremely important delta which exists last year. But look at it from 5.8 to budget at 5.1. That's a huge delta I've seldom seen India doing. And my criticism of the government earlier, and very public criticism, was that they don't do enough counter-cyclical fiscal policy. So fiscal policy in earlier regimes were pro-cyclical. In good times you seem to be doing well, but like you tend to sort of do more spending and stuff. Whereas in good times you should actually create fiscal space by keeping a buffer for the bad times. And that was not really happening. And but this delta was a clear move to do that. Despite that delta from 5.8 to 5.1, 0.7% of GDP delta, remember that the debt to GDP ratio was stagnant at 83%. So you need to do more. Actually, that's not a very healthy number still, because another growth shock comes and the debt can become somewhat more unsustainable in that sense. So I think here is an opportunity which has arisen. The RBI transferred 2.11 trillion. Trillion is a lakh crore, if somebody doesn't convert that easily. So that is a record profit transfer, and coming from a interim budget estimate of 1.02 trillion, there is a huge additional number which has come. So RBI profit transfer is 0.6% of GDP. Now, even if you assume it was 1.02 already built into it, you really have a big delta, and now you can get a reduction of 0.4% of GDP just by that. You may want to increase a bit of it on capex, because capex in interim budget was lukewarm. I mean, it was flattish, and that was not a good sign, because government had really expanded capital expenditure earlier, and this sort of an increase, probably you can build a bit of it. But the government had budgeted very conservatively. The nominal GDP number, they were taking at an 11% growth. To my mind, it's easily 11.5 at the minimum. So you will get some benefit in lowering the debt to GDP ratio on that count, fiscal on that count. And here is a chance we can get more sustainable. I'll come to other aspects, especially the job, etc. I think I've taken a lot more time, but it was important to explain that there should be counter-cyclical fiscal policies by creating a space.
Thank you, sir. I think that's an entire question of mine that's been now already answered. I wanted to ask you what would be done to bring the fiscal deficit at to 5.1%, and is it really achievable? So I think I'll take an opportunity to move to Sri Vijayakumar and just get a sense on what are the market expectations, right? I think the stock market is zooming. Sentiments are very good. What do you really think is the market expecting? Right? Market is very, very quick to respond to any budget. So would love to hear your thoughts as a market person. What do you think the market is looking for in the budget?
Market participants are like Oliver Twist. They always ask for more. But then I don't think this is the right time to ask for any further concession from the government, because the market has been doing exceedingly well. On 23rd March 2020, we had the COVID crash, which took the Nifty to 7,511. From there, it has shot up. It's more than 24,000 now, and Sensex has crossed the 80,000 milestone. And investors have been lobbying all the way to the bank, and naturally, it will not be correct, appropriate from the market perspective also to ask for more concessions. The industry, the market does not want any concession from the government now. That's a fact. The market only wants one thing, and the request to the government is don't upset the apple cart by raising for example, the long-term capital gain that has been going around for quite some time now. Don't upset the apple cart. Market would be very happy with the status quo that exists right now, because some people have been asking for the abolition of the long-term capital gains tax, because there is a promise from the government in 2004, I believe. It was in 2004 that Chidambaram, as the finance minister, abolished the long-term capital gains tax and introduced the STT, Securities Transaction Tax, in its place, because STT is a very convenient tax which collects itself. But then the long-term capital gains was reintroduced, but then the STT also says, you can't expect the government, and particularly when the government is getting a lot of revenue, to kill that goose that lays the golden egg. Therefore, we are not expecting anything. 10% long-term capital gains tax for capital gains exceeding 1 lakh in a year is very, very, very fair, even for people with very deep pockets, like my friend Mr. Alexander Muthoot here. They need to pay only 10% long-term capital gains tax, even though their personal tax bracket will be very high. So that is a very, very, personally I would say it is very desirable, very good for the capital markets. Of course, again, there can be arguments that there is a double taxation on dividends, because when corporates are taxed on their profits, And when the dividends are paid to the shareholders, again, the dividend is clubbed to their income and taxed again. But then taxpayers don't grudge that. I'm a taxpayer, pay long-term capital gains, dividend tax, all this in the high tax bracket. But then I would say that in India's context, particularly when you have, even now, even though we are a close to $4 trillion economy, the fastest growing large economy in the world, our per capita income is only $2,700, and financial inclusion continues to be a challenge. Therefore, the government needs money for financial inclusion. As you said in your remarks initially, the first thing, order or the document which the Prime Minister signed was, I think it was Mr. Joshi who referred to that, this PM Awas Yojana to construct 30 million houses. So you need money for that, and the money has to come from tax revenue. Therefore, I don't think the market has any expectations of concessions being coming from the government. Our request is only don't upset the apple cart. Status quo will be eminently desirable.
I love the way you articulate the apple cart point, and, and I think that's fair, understood. I'll come back to you on the market once again, but I'd like to go to Mr. Joshi here. Sir, can you hear me? Mr. Joshi, can you hear me? He's speaking.
Please be closer to the mic, I think.
So you recently spoke about government to focus less on capital expenditure and let the private players take over in order to soften fiscal deficit. How do you see the government addressing this space?
The private investment issue, I think, is that the question?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so I think what has happened over the last few years is, I think the post-pandemic strategy of the government was initially to provide welfare. That also very calibrated, and then moment I think pandemic went away, the focus was on pushing investments up. And if you look at the components of GDP today in 23-24, which is the fiscal year for which we have data, the investments are about 28% higher than what they were in 2019-20, but consumption is only higher by about 17-18%. So the focus, I think, and this largely happened because government budgetary support to investment, direct budgetary support to investments in infrastructure activities went up. Now, households are investing in, I think the housing market is seeing a pickup, so households are getting focused on that. But for private sector, I think it's been a very complicated story. It's not that they don't have money to invest. I think the private sector has very healthy balance sheets for the mid and the large corporates. I think that's what our ratings show. And also, I think the government came in with a very favorable tax regime, which made them corporate taxes very competitive. And then we also have industrial incentives through the production-linked incentive scheme. Despite all that, I think it's well recognized that private investment pickup has been extremely tepid. It's not that it's not happening, but it is happening in areas where there is more certainty of demand. And for instance, I think government is building infrastructure, so that is spilling over as demand for steel and cement for the private corporate sector. So we are seeing healthy investments in steel, in cement. Auto sector is seeing a pickup because auto is an aspirational product, and I think we will see. I think so that has its own drivers, particularly the auto segment in the higher categories, higher ticket items. Now the third area where private investment is showing signs of pickup is where incentives are given. I think, whether it could be electronics, which have seen a very sharp increase because of the PLI, or pharmaceuticals, where PLI scheme is also helping to provide incentives to the private sector, or where tariffs have been put on Chinese imports. Now, I think the problem that we have today is, and I think let me link it to the global issue as well. We are seeing tariff walls increasing. US, Europe, both are levying higher tariffs on Chinese imports, and I think if Mr. Trump gets elected, I think it could be even sharper increase. So that's creating a condition of oversupply in Asia, and particularly from one large economy. And as a result of that, I think many of the private sector folks are also worried about overcapacity from China flooding us. Now that is very difficult to address, I think, from the policy point of view, because the one way to address it is you put tariffs on imports from China, which we are doing selectively, or you incentivize your domestic production. The reason why that is important is because as far as the power cost is concerned, as far as the logistics are concerned, I think China is far, far more efficient than most economies, and definitely more efficient than India. India is trying to improve its logistics. There have been, I think, we will see the impact gradually, but it can't be done in a day. And so I think the point I'm referring to is that these things, you need to work on improving your supply side of the economy, the infrastructure, logistics, put more money on R&D, but that's not going to trigger private investment immediately. I think so if that is being done, then it might be worthwhile to support some of the sectors which are critical through incentives. I think that's the trend globally. It is anti-liberalization in a sense that for several decades we saw tariff walls come down and countries benefit from trading with each other, and I think getting the benefit of comparative advantage of some other economies. But now looks like, I think, resilience has become more focus right now. So here I think what government, my sense is what the budget might do, getting back to that question, is they might give some more incentive to some segments. Now their focus probably would be on more labor intensive sectors, because the labor intensive sectors, whether it is textiles or it is leather, I think their share in exports has been falling over time. And not only that, I think the domestic production is also, I think, has been weak. So, and we have a large workforce. So I think we might see some incentives for labor intensive sectors also. So I think in this geopolitical environment that is playing out, I think the policy making has become very complicated, and it will keep testing the political or the policy heft of the government, I think, over time. There's no quick answer to any of these things, but I think my sense is that we'll focus on promoting manufacturing, and budget will do something more on that. And as far as imports from China are concerned, which continue to be rise, they are important for us, because without cheaper inputs, you can't be exporting electronics, which we are exporting. You can't be exporting pharmaceutical, because API, China produces the raw materials at the cheapest cost for pharmaceuticals. So you need that, but at the same time, I think you also want to make sure that there is no excessive dumping in your country, because remember that Chinese capacities, I think they have already recovered their fixed cost in most cases. They are already depreciated, so they can afford to reduce the price. And specifically because the pressure from the West is rising, so you will have overcapacity. So very, very complicated scenario for pushing private investment up in this environment. I think so very calibrated support to sectors, and the rest, I think private sector doesn't invest just because it has healthy balance sheets. I think they look at what kind of profit they are likely to make going ahead and what kind of risks are in the horizon. So let me stop there at that.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Joshi. I think those were very pertinent points, and I think some of them we will circle back. I just want to, move the focus a little away to a more specific question to Shri Muthoot. Would want to get a sense on what does the NBFC sector in particular, as one of the big leaders in that segment, what would be the segment specifically look at, and what would be for, so to say, your ask from this budget?
Thank you. I was also thinking, all this talk till now was more of economics, big high-level thinking, where I think Even me personally have no role. I can't influence any of those things. All these China, big infrastructure, GDP, deficit, etc. Okay, I was thinking of more basic. I'm more of a basic person. I'm definitely a businessman. So more into the basics, ground realities. I think for me, as I again repeating, what we need to do here is more of consumption. To get more of consumption, I said you need to put more of purchasing power in the hands of people. So purchasing power definitely is important, and maybe as an NBFC, we are considered as the go-between between the last mile and the banks. So we have been always seen as NBFCs have been always seen as helping the banking sector or the financial sector in giving credit or putting funds at the last end stage. So my thoughts always, or our request always, whether it is the finance ministry or the regulators like the Reserve Bank or the securities, SEBI, etc., would be how to deepen these markets, how to deepen these markets, and how to make more participation by the general population, how they can participate in the development. And certainly it should also happen through the consumption of nature. You cannot wish away consumption today, because in my earlier days, maybe 40-50 years back, India was always a agriculture or food grain deficient country. Today, that's not the case. We are not at all deficient in food grains. There is no need of any agricultural revolution, etc. There is no need of importing any food. We are actually self-sufficient. So that we have passed that stage. The next stage is in the consumption. What are the things which a family, a rural family, or the family of the lower or the middle class are aspiring. So today, any house, whether it is Kerala or other place, a mobile phone. If you look at a mobile phone, it is passing. Everybody needs it. Everybody has it. So it is not actually what they need is food. It is actually what they need is such things. Maybe a mobile phone, maybe a transport, maybe a cycle, scooter, car. So people who are earlier driving a cycle have graduated to a motorcycle. Motorcycle has gone to a car, and families have more than one car thing. That is what is prosperity. That is what is economy. That actually takes up the economy, and that will bring in demand. Demand, as somebody was saying, private sector is just not investing. Correct. They have money. They are not seeing demand. They are not seeing whether their products will be taken up by the people. So you have to create demand. When there is demand, things will happen. You heard about what everybody is talking about China. They have such a lot of capacity, but there is nobody to buy it. The same thing in Europe, Western country. They produce such a lot. They don't have the demand. But here in India, we have that. Why don't we make use of that is what I think. So as an NBFC, what we need is actually definitely a support or a helping hand from the government. So one of the things we have always been asking is we also need funding. So our source of funding is usually banks, and second is the debt market, and third probably is the deposit market. But unfortunately, the Reserve Bank of India and the Government of India is not very favorable for giving more licenses to NBFCs to access deposits. Earlier, maybe 15 years back, CRISIL was also there. All companies, all NBFCs with a specific rating had access to deposits. Today, that is something which we have been, at least the highly rated ones, the big ones, we have been asking for that. Of course, they have their issues of why it should not be granted, etc. But then that is something which we need to do. The second one, which I again was talking about, was how to access the retail debt market. The retail debt market is something which is permitted. but then it has its issues of maybe ease of doing it, ease of doing. Ease of doing is what is lacking. Ease of doing is what is lacking. That is actually, we have also taken up with the finance ministry. We have actually asked two things also in this. One was that for today, for a listed NCD bond, there is a tax deduction at source. The 10% tax is deducted, which came only from last year. For a listed NCD where the full subscription is through the organized debt market, etc., and it is all these are all people with all these are electronic. So there is no need for a tax deduction. But what happens is that the secondary market for the listed debt is dead. Because suppose you invest 1 lakh in a debt today, it's a 1 year debt, 1 year paper. After 8 months, you sell it in the market for maybe 1 lakh 9,000 rupees. The second person purchases at the 9th month or 10th month. He purchases 109. At the end of the 12 months, he gets maybe 1,200 rupees, 12,000 rupees as interest. The issuer deducts the whole 10% from him, the last person standing. The last holder, we deduct, he has got only 2,000 rupees as interest, but we deduct tax on the total 12,000. What happens in his assessment here? In his assessment, the income tax department will see the form filed by us, say that you have received 12,000. His income tax return will show, I got only 2,000 rupees. So first challenge is there. They will send a notice, concealment of income. You received 12,000, you are saying only 2,000. Then he has to employ somebody and say, I got only 10,000 because I purchased it from the market at 1,010. Then he has to get a refund of that money, or janjat. So it's a best, don't trade. That is killed that market. That is killed that market. So secondary market is killed. Nobody will purchase. So I'll wait. So there are only like, where is the secondary? What is the point of listing that? There is no point in listing that. So that is one thing which we again told them. And they are not losing anything. Till last year, there was no TDS. Now only the tax deduction source has happened. I don't know what is the big benefit of that. Second, we had a talk with the Securities Commission also. They asked us how to deal, and I said one of the things which you are now saying is that all banks give extra interest for retail depositors and pensioners, etc. If you put money in the bank, if it is 7% for a corporate deposit, it is 8% for individuals, etc. Now, Securities Board is saying you cannot pay more to this set of investors. You have to pay the same to the corporates as well as the retailers. I said the whole world moves like this. All the banks pay this. No, they say under section 31, you cannot induce somebody with gifts, and they are transferring this as gift to gift. You are giving a gift to the retail investor of 1%. It is not equitable, so we have to stop it. See, these are all small things, but it will kill the market. So if the corporates who deposit, who subscribe for 100 crores, 200 crores, etc., is getting the same interest as a retail, what is it? Why are the banks giving more for the retail? Again, you have to put purchasing power. This is the purchasing power in the hands of retail. So these are some of the asks which we had. Of course, there are so many other asks, but then my point is, finally, the arm law should get more money to spend. They should get more methods to spend. I'll spend that. I'll talk on that in the next round.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So, I think Mr. Mridul Saggar is very eager to respond, but
I just wanted to ask
yeah.
some clarification.
Yeah.
So, George, you raised very important points. I mean, I can see the micro pain what the businesses go through. But look at it from the macro angle. I mean, if you look at it from the macro angle, what is it that is lacking in the country? Like we say, India is a very high growth story. India is a growth story. So either we agree or we disagree with that. If we agree with that, then we say consumption is not growing. Then what is growing? Is investment growing? Investment cycle is not kicking off. clearly. So then what is growing and what is this growth story taking place from? So do you want more consumption to be artificially boosted? I'm not that sure whether that would really work. Now, even if you assume you have to boost consumption, then one way out is that firms like you should lend more to the households, and that unsecured lending is already increasing. So it's more a concern rather than that it's not really increasing. And that lending is also increasing the household liabilities because they are taking the loans and bringing down the financial saving. Then we complain that financial saving rate in India is falling. So you can't have all the good things at the same time. There are linkages here, and we need to understand those linkages on how it is. So the option is then you reduce the taxes, and that's something which probably you want to say in micro business forms, that these taxes and these should be reduced. Look at the tax to GDP ratio in the country. It's low at less than 12%. The tax to GDP ratio looks pretty low to me and needs to be hiked probably more. So how do we solve these inconsistencies in the model? There are certain products which people say, yes, the business is the debt or whatever it is. There is also thought that why don't you levy a tax on futures, which is probably future to cash ratio is in the stock markets are rising abnormally. And I see my friend from Geojit very much nodding it, and probably he'll have a better sense on what to do. I'm not saying you should actually tax the futures, because that will itself spook the market and probably have multiple ripple effects. But then what do we do on the tax fronts? What taxes do we really reduce? It's not clear to me.
I agree on all this macro level thinking, etc. But it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. Let us start with consumption. That's my point. Let us start with consumption. That is my simple point. If you make everything perfect and then start consumption, there will be nothing with the hands of the people to consume. And unless consumption is there, there won't be demand. When there is demand, you will need more factories, you will need more things. That is what is my point. That will spur the economy. That will spur the economy. Maybe some pains will be there initially, but that is my thinking, of course. I am not a strategist, etc. I am only a ground level person.
Thank you,
I will
Mr.
add some points here, both to what he said and Mridul also made some observations. It's very difficult to disagree with you on the need to raise taxes. Our tax to GDP ratio is low, but it has been growing up the last financial year, FY24. I think our direct tax has increased by 17.7%. So we are on the right track. But then, how do we increase, stimulate consumption? There is a general agreement that we need to boost consumption, because even though the economy is growing at 8.2%, consumption is sluggish. But when we talk about the consumption, we have to understand that certain segments of consumption are doing exceedingly well. Economists have been talking about the K-shaped recovery. Economists are very good in using the alphabets of the English language to describe how the economy is doing. Sometimes we talk about V-shaped recovery, W-shaped, double dip, L-shaped stagnation, things like that. It was recently this letter K came into currency. And now, if you look at the performance of different segments in the economy, because of this K-shaped recovery in the economy, luxury consumption is doing exceedingly well. Take star hotels, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star hotels. It is difficult to get rooms, right? It's difficult to get rooms. Flights are operating at near 100%. Very difficult if you make a very quick booking at short notice. A sports utility vehicle, expensive automobiles, you have waiting period of 1 year, 6 months to 1 year. Whereas at entry level, you can buy off the shelf. So it is the luxury consumption which is doing well, it is very strong, but at the bottom of the pyramid, consumption is weak, and that is why the worst performing segment in the stock market is the FMCG, fast moving consumer goods. It's not doing well. Of course, there are green shoots, I would say, because if I look at the last quarter results of two-wheelers represent rural consumption, because more than 50% of two-wheelers are sold in rural areas. There has been 25% growth. So there are green shoots of recovery, but we need to address this issue of sluggish consumption. And one way to address that should be through the cut in GST, not through the budget. That's a totally different thing. The GST Council is the authority to completely rationalize the tax rates in GST and also to reduce some taxes. We can certainly boost consumption.
I think it's a good, set of points that came in, especially on consumption increase and, how the current consumption pattern indicates, more luxury consumption going up and what we need to do to boost consumption slightly at the bottom of the pyramid. Going back to Mr. Joshi. Sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, please speak closer to the mic.
Yeah.
I think so that.
No, I think, this entire conversation around, we are still 45-50% agriculture unemployment. There is a huge push on exports, both goods and services. Goods, I think, is something, we're catching up. So, I think one school of thought that is open to debate is, should India become the next manufacturing hub following China, right? What should our manufacturing strategy be, right? There are enough geopolitical reasons why there is manufacturing moving to India. There are other opportunities in terms of what we manufacture, which may not be in the large format factory space, but say MSME, and therefore may have a very different path than what China took, right? What do you think is the opportunity from our manufacturing side?
I could hear the parts of the question. I think it's about the shape of manufacturing in India, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I think the manufacturing actually never became a growth engine in India, despite so much policy focus. There was new policy, I think, industrial policy. Then I think we got more focus on manufacturing. I think the reason for that is, see, geopolitically, the way things are working, I think you have nearshoring and friendshoring, which are getting attention. And as far as the friendshoring is concerned, countries that have benefited from supply moving out of China are countries like Vietnam. Not so much India. And from friendshoring, I think Mexico is benefiting from I think Mexican economy is doing very well, I think, in manufacturing terms also. Now, so for India to really participate fully in that process, I think we need to engage more with the foreign players. I think so that I can come on that a little later. But now coming back to so that is the geopolitical side of it, that we've not been able to take advantage of the shifts in supply chains or shifts in production basis as of now. Domestically, I think if you want manufacturing to succeed, I think there is absolutely no doubt that you have to be competitive. And I think if you look at power costs, which I pointed out earlier, or you look at the logistics, I think we are improving, but we are still some distance away from being competitive. And now in this era, I think without that competitive edge, I think you cannot be an export-driven economy, so to say. Now within the economy, I think even the manufacturing shape of things is changing, because our assessment tells us that the kind of sectors that are going to come up in future, about 18 to 20% industrial investment will happen in segments like semiconductors, electric vehicles, and electronics. So I think there are newer areas that are emerging, and the traditional areas have, I think, they will not contribute, their contribution to the overall investments will decline. But given where we are placed and the extent of labor we have, I think it's generally believed that you will have to walk on two legs, which is, I think, manufacturing along with the services. I think so far in the last 20, 30 years, we walked on heavily depending on the services leg. Manufacturing hasn't done well. So now I think, so the issue is what can we do about it? I mean, and I think here, let me, I think, and how can we employ the number of people who are in the job market? How can we make sure that everybody has gainful employment? Problem in India is not so much of unemployment. I think everybody seems to be employed, but they are. You have to look at what kind of jobs they are doing. I think there's a acute problem of underemployment. So how do you sort that out? What my sense is that because of our leaning more on manufacturing, creating infrastructure, improving the power supply, you will see manufacturing do well. But it's not going to become a leading engine of growth. And let me tell you why that is so. I think if I look at exports for that, I mean, most Asian economies became export-driven manufacturing hubs. The share of services in our total exports has grown from 30% about 10, 15 years back, 20 years back, to now 42%, and by the end of this decade, we might be 50% service exporter and 50% manufacturing, which means that I think from an export point of view, services are doing well. Even from a domestic point of view, I think our import dependence on China has been rising. So somewhere I think the not having the supply side of the economy too strong, actually you have to pay a cost for that. I think which is you'll have to incentivize the segments, and I think that's a choice for the government. Things are moving in the right direction, but I think there is a lot of catch up to do. If you look at the future forward-looking sectors, I think whether it is electric vehicles or it is electronics or it is solar batteries, I don't think any country in the world competes with China. Everybody is scared of their excess production being dumped, and we are seeing tariffs being laid from advanced countries, and also I think we ourselves are putting tariffs because you can't domestically promote your industry if you allow a free flow of those imports. So I think promoting manufacturing, with share of manufacturing will rise. I think our forecast is that it is around 17-18%. It will become around 20% by 2030, which is I think a gradual upward movement. Share of services will also move up, but at a much slower pace than it did in the past. And share of agriculture, of course, will keep coming down. And I think so. It's going to be a challenge to provide jobs to all the people who want to eject out of agriculture into the more productive sectors. And I don't see any easy solution to that. And that is the reason why I think we have free food for 800 million. We are moving towards more social welfare in terms of social security, providing health insurance, etc. I think all that is an indication that not everybody is able to participate in the growth process. There are different views. Some say India's route is services, others say it is manufacturing. I believe that I think we'll have to walk on both legs and lean a little bit more on manufacturing while we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. I think very well articulated in terms of how manufacturing is critical, and we will need to continue to lean on manufacturing and services both. But just taking a slightly contrarian view, right? What you spoke about is largely the large format manufacturing, right? Automotive, electric, pharma, electronics, semiconductor, etc. Right? 2019, the government of India launched a scheme on the one district, one product, and some very interesting data came out that out of the nearly 800 districts, about 10%, 80% of all exports in India come from about 80 districts, right? Little less than 80 districts. 100 districts don't do any exports, right? And about 350 districts collectively contribute only 1% to export, right? So in that terms, what also came out was, if you look at, these hyper-competitive, large manufacturing businesses, versus there are several areas where there may be opportunity. For example, if you take many of these MSME-led sectors, right, leather, right, handicrafts, Ayurveda, for example, right? In all of this, our export currently hovers around single-digit percentage, right? Unlike, and form a very, very small part of what the global opportunity is, right? Would you have any thoughts on if this can be used as an engine for growth, which augments the already, large push on the overall manufacturing that we're doing? Mr. Joshi, did you catch the question?
Yeah, I couldn't hear. I think I could only hear maybe 5% of that. I'm sorry. I think if you can just pose the question again, maybe I'll try to. The last part of the question, I think what should I answer?
Yeah, essentially if you look at MSME-led sectors, which are not perhaps directly competing with China, like leather, handicrafts, Ayurveda, which individually may be not large, but collectively may offer an opportunity for sectors such as MSMEs to also democratize the entire export and manufacturing across India.
So I think I partially got your question. I think it's on whether I think we can use MSME as an engine of growth. I think there is absolutely no doubt that I think MSME is not only I think in India but globally. I think they are more employment intensive, and I think they are drivers of growth even in some of the advanced countries. But their definition of MSME is slightly different from us. I think my sense is that the MSME's competitive edge got hit a bit because of GST, because many of them used to derive their advantage from the taxation that existed earlier, which disappeared with this. And I think post-pandemic, the large corporates have been the beneficiaries, whereas the MSMEs have kind of lost out. So how do you revive that? I think that is why I think the route that we typically take is give more forbearance to the small sector, etc. But I think you need a little more. You need to dig a little more deeper into why I think the small sector is not doing so well. And I think it is the constraints. I mean that exist in the system for them. I mean so. I think you need to address the issues, whether it is from basic infra like power, etc. Everything I think is more difficult for them. Some MSMEs continue to do well because they are integrated with the larger corporates. I think if the big companies do well, they provide ancillary services to them, so they do. And this particularly I think plays out in the auto sector. But in general, my sense is that MSME sector, I think, requires a little more support at this time. I think if we want to make the manufacturing more labor intensive, and there are newer areas as you were pointing out. I think. See, I'll just give you one example which my former boss, Dr. Rakesh Mohan, often used to give. I think why did Bangladesh become such a big hub in textiles, which is a labor intensive, which also uses small sector, large sector everywhere. And one of the reasons is that, which he gives is that in Bangladesh, I think what they did was, since women are largely employed in this segment, they made sure that women have a proper crush facility near the production base, so a lady can see her child twice or thrice in a day. Even that made a huge difference to the productivity of work in that area. I think that is just one simple example of how you can make a difference to engaging more labor-intensive segments, particularly women, where we need to work harder because women's participation in the labor force is only about 37%. The countries like Vietnam and China, they have close to above 60%. Men's participation is above 70%, I think, if I'm getting it right. So women need to be promoted more and got more into manufacturing. You also need to address the labor constraints. Women can't work beyond certain hours in certain states. I think some states have been doing that. So I think if you do all this, you will be able to more productively engage the population which is available to us. And MSME specifically, I think I haven't done any specific work on that, but I think what I know from what I have what I've been reading is that there is the amount of constraints that MSME faces, they cannot be competitive in this environment with higher power costs, with higher infrastructure costs.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. I think
So I hope this answers your question.
yes, largely, and that gives us two important cues to take this further. I'd like to get some thoughts from Mr. Mridul Saggar at this stage. Jobs and employment, participation of women, right? The labor market being extremely fragmented. Now, at this stage, I think one of the thoughts, our director often talks about, reskilling and education, and that as an investment that we need. We are about 3.9% is the education spend today, right? Just to stimulate that entire employment bit, reskilling bit, right? What opportunities do you think exist, and where do you think we could potentially, help the economy by investing more in education?
Yes, I think we aren't doing enough on the education. The public spending on education remains at a dismal level at roughly 3% of GDP, and this is half of the world now. So clearly we need to step up our spendings on the education. We have seen government trying to rationalize expenditure by sort of not supporting institutions which can do self-generation of funds, but in the process the quality of education has begun to take the hit. So we need to create world-class institutions, partly self-funding, but at least making sure that money is not a constraint for a poor student who is actually has the capacity to get good degrees. Now, on the gender part of the issue, if you're talking of financial inclusion, I have two people from the finance industry. The good part is that for the bank accounts as such, the latest FinTech survey suggests that both for men and women, the inclusion rate is 77%. So the gender disparities have been curbed on that, but that's half the story. It's just on the deposit side. The lending side is missing. So the lending side has to be the focus from the finance, so that more finance can be made available to the women, and that would push it. But there is larger change which is going on in terms of future of work. And that's something we seem to be missing out in our strategy. So clearly future of work is changing. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, all this is coming in a big way and taking jobs away. And we can't stop this process. I would hate to suggest that we need to be protectionist on that and give jobs just like that. And it has to be the skill transition, as you said. It has to be skill transition. So I'm a bit scared, there have been this suggestion by important political lobbies to start a robot tax in India. Now, I have been consulted by the Ministry on this issue, and I have been very forthright on this issue that this is not the right time to impose a robot tax, because firstly, we are behind the curve on these changes. The Chinese and the US are well ahead of us. So you need to generate innovation here. You need to have more AIs and MLs and make the system, Indian industry, more competitive, because it will have a long-term repercussions coming in. And therefore, what you sort of need to do is basically invest more in reskilling and training into digital technologies, lower down the curve, but also in the high-tech sector. We should miss out this changing scenario of creative destruction, which will be an inevitable force which will change the world. So we need to focus on skilling there. We need to raise the spendings, and that should be the future.
Sure, thank you. I think that's very insightful. Changing gears and also just keeping track of time to leave some time for participant questions, right? We want to just look at a slightly more nuanced version of the budget conversation in the Kerala context, and I'll put together 2-3 pointers where all of you can probably comment, right? What does the near term look for the Kerala economy, right, considering where we are? And therefore, what expectations could the state have from the central budget in terms of support, in terms of growth, etc. Right? Any comments on the current, crisis that Kerala faces, right? Anything that you think would be short-term measures that could be taken? And largely in the context of Kerala as an educated state, right, with very high degree of education, right? How do we look at maybe looking this from a more sustainability perspective, right? That Kerala has got here the best HDI metrics in the country, right? As several states look at, $1 trillion own goals, right? We can hear Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, UP all talking about individually becoming $1 trillion economies in the near term, right? What can they learn from Kerala in terms of, what went right, and what can they learn from Kerala in terms of what they should probably avoid, right? So maybe one at a time, if all of you can comment. I'll start with you, Mr. Vijayakumar.
Well, Kerala is facing a major crisis, but we have to distinguish between an economic crisis and a fiscal crisis. What Kerala is facing now is a fiscal crisis and not an economic crisis, because if you look at the growth rate of the economy compared to other states, the growth rate is okay. But then we are in a total fiscal mess because of the excessive borrowings of the government. Our debt is not sustainable. That's a basic problem. Sound principle of public finance is that if your debt is to be sustainable, your interest to revenue ratio, interest payments as a percentage of total revenue should be 10% if it is to be sustainable. For the states in Kerala, states in India put together, the average for the states is around 13.13 or 13.31. Whereas for Kerala, it is 19.98, close to 20%. But totally unsustainable. And this unsustainable debt situation happened mainly because of one decision which the government took at the height of the COVID crisis. The government decided to implement, appointed a pay commission and implemented a pay commission. Kerala is perhaps the only state in India where salary for the government staff are revised every 5 years. For the central government, it is 10 years. For Tamil Nadu, I think they revised the salary last time they did it was in 2017, right? Kerala, which is almost bankrupt, is doing it every 5 years. And the additional expenditure as a result of this revision in salary and pensions has been 24,000 crores annually. For the first year it was 24,000 crores, after that it has come down a little bit. But the additional expenditure incurred during the last 3 years, just because of this decision, has been more than 64,000 crores. So that has cost the state dear. But for that, the fiscal crisis would not have happened. So it was a single trigger for the fiscal crisis. And that was a self-inflicted, self-inflicted wound. And also the government also has been, I'm not something political here, the government also has not been very consistent in its criticism of, or the reason for the crisis. Initially the government has been saying, the Kerala government, the finance minister, the prime chief minister, and also the people who are the spokesmen of the party in the channel discussion in which I also participate occasionally. Their initial argument was that Kerala has lost 57,400 crores because of central government's discrimination. There is no such thing as discrimination. They have been saying that our borrowings for an infrastructure project called the KIFBI and the Social Security Pension Limited that borrowing has been treated as part of government's borrowing. That is not fair. It is being done for other states also. Then the stoppage of the GST compensation has hurt us. GST compensation has been stopped for all the states, not for Kerala alone. And we got the highest amount of revenue deficit grant of 53,130 crores, the highest for any state in India. Kerala received. So other states like Odisha, which is very backward and did not receive even 1 rupee as revenue deficit grant, should be complaining. But Kerala is saying that our revenue deficit grant has come down in the 4th year. And so that was the initial argument, 57,400 crore deficit. And that did not hold water, and then they moved the Supreme Court. And when they moved the Supreme Court, the argument was not this. This discrimination argument was completely shelved. And the Supreme Court, Kapil Sibal, for whom the government spent a few crores of rupees as a legal fees, Kapil Sibal's argument was that the state is borrowing from the market, so the center need not intervene. That was the argument, and the Supreme Court also rejected that. They referred this argument to the higher division bench, but the one sentence in the judgment was the Kerala government does not deserve an interim injunction. That was the order. The Supreme Court rejected it, even though the Supreme Court was initially very sympathetic towards the Kerala government's argument. And now that also, the goalposts are being changed very frequently. In the last 2 weeks, we are hearing something new from the finance minister, and he has been saying that we need a special package of 24,000 crores from the center, because other people also are asking for a special package. Naidu has some political bargaining power. Nitish Kumar also has that political bargaining power with the coalition government, but the Kerala government doesn't have that. CPM or the LDF doesn't have that political bargaining power. So that also is not going to work. So this fiscal crisis is the problem, not the economic crisis. And if you ask me frankly, I don't see any silver lining among the dark clouds. I see only a dark cloud. There is no silver lining at all. And the government will have to take some drastic measures, like freezing a part of the salary division and the pension division, which they unjustly did in 2021. That was the plan B, which our finance minister has been speaking about, even though he did not divulge the details of the plan B. So that is one issue. And also the Kerala, you refer to the high rank which Kerala has in HDI. We talk about that as a Kerala model. But there are economists like Amartya Sen who says that it is not the Kerala model, because a model should have two characteristics. Number one, a model should be sustainable, and number two, a model should be capable of being replicated by others. Kerala model is neither, and therefore Amartya Sen calls it the Kerala experience, right? And this Kerala experience itself is at crossroads now. We'll have to take some very drastic decisions, some very unpopular decisions, but then good economics is bad politics, particularly from the politician's perspective. That's a problem. I will give you some interesting data. The total amount of money invested in public sector undertakings in Kerala, PSUs, is more than 26,000 crores. Without taking into consideration more than 1 lakh crores of financial money given as borrowings, excluding that, the total equity investment is more than 26,000 crores. And if you take the latest figures, the total accumulated debt now is more than 54,000 crores. What public service are these public sector undertakings serving? They are not serving any public service at all, but then we are protecting that. And even now, for all the political parties in Kerala, whether it is the LDF or the UDF, privatization is a bad word. Privatization is necessary, but politically privatization is not acceptable. So there are very serious issues like that which require very bold decisions, but politicians will take bold decisions, as the famous philosopher, I forgot his name, famously said, politicians will do the rational thing. It was John Maynard Keynes who said it. Politicians will do the rational thing, but only after exploring all other possibilities. In Kerala, we have been exploring all other possibilities, and also politicians will take bold reforms only when they face a crisis, like what India did in 1991. Because till a crisis is reached, it will be always desirable to go along the beaten path, because drastic decisions will be always politically expensive. So these are my remarks regarding the Kerala economy.
Thank you, Mr. Vijayakumar. Mr. Muthoot.
I hate to indulge in politics.
I mean, I would welcome you to keep it down to economics.
But to me, I can't be. As a businessman, I cannot be. Okay, so I think what Kerala has, actually, you said education or education, etc., is very good. But the problem is that our education is just the basic education. We don't have quality institutions in Kerala. Quality institutions, whether in any field, we don't have. The basic education, or earlier if you say pre-degree BSc, we have all the BA, BSc, etc. Now, jokingly people say, you educate somebody for a pre-degree or BA degree and make him unemployable. Once he gets a degree, he will not do such type of jobs. Then he's waiting for a job, and he's waiting for a government job. Jokingly, when people come to me also for employment, etc., they said I was working here, I was very employed. No, I was not employed anywhere. I only had some small jobs in some private sector. To him, private sector is not a job. Job is only a government job. If he has, my father, he has no job, sir. But where is he working? He is working in some private companies. But he feels, or the general people feel, unless you are employed by the Kerala government, you are unemployed. You are unemployed. They don't consider a private sector employment as employment at all. Oh, he is working somewhere. He is working in some shop. He is working somewhere, but not employed. Employed means, so what has happened now? Today everybody wants a government job. Everybody, and many people in Kerala are not getting government jobs. They are flying off. They know, if I stand here, I don't stand a chance. Just leave the country. Just leaving the country. So education, to me, should be the quality education, and that should be left to the private sector. You cannot expect all the education institutions to be charity institutions, philanthropic. No, it cannot happen. How? Probably at the independence time, etc., there were very good patriotic people there who put all their money into free education, etc. Today you can't ask a businessman, you invest all your profits in educating the poor people. He is not thinking like that. He is also like you and me. Today everybody is matlab ke baat. What can I get? Everybody thinks like that. So everybody thinks like that. So why do you expect a person who is making lots of money, a very rich industrialist, to put all his money into educating poor people? That is government's job. Let government do their education free, consider, etc. Leave that to the private sector. Let them charge the correct fees. That if they are good, people will come. If they are not good, people will not come. There is nothing. So education should be quality education, and that government should have institutions. Private also should have institutions. Private should be left to them to do it on their own with least government interference. The IT industry is doing well in Kerala. It's only because the government is not able to put their hands there. Just because they are not able to put their hands there, it is working. The moment you allow them, that is gone to the dogs. That will go to the dogs. That will go. Kerala is good for it's a good education people, a sector. We encourage education. We have 2 nursing colleges in hospitals also. There is a huge shortage of nurses all over India, all over the world. But Kerala government does not permit, is not giving more and more nursing college seats to the colleges. They are saying you can't do that, you can't do this. And then again, practical things. I told you I'm a ground level person. A girl who has studied in maybe pre-degree for arts or science, she would have gone to pre-degree for arts or science or 12th arts or science because she didn't get somewhere else. But in Kerala government, if you want to get admission in a nursing college, you should have studied biology. So what happens? A good number of girls decide to go for nursing after 12th. By the time they have studied only some BA or BSc or maths, they don't get admission here. Easily all the states outside Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Bangalore, they admit these students. All the students go and study there. They don't care. Finally, everybody is getting the same degree. The Indian Medical Association, Nursing Association gives the degree. Whether you have studied maths or science, etc. In outside Kerala, in Kerala, you are more loyal than the king. You are more, so they can't get here. You just look at the people around you, your village. How many people have gone outside the state to study for nursing? They pay through the nose. They don't even see a good hospital by their education. After that, they get the same degree and come back. If there is such a lot of need for, I said just nursing, there's something which I know. Why? It is just the Kerala government bureaucracy which says that we will not do, neither we will give colleges increase the seats or we will permit such things. But how is it other states are doing it? You see, 75, same thing for this paramedicals also. This big demand for paramedicals, all this lab technician, etc. It's Kerala, you don't get seats. They are saying Kerala is not having demand. I don't know. You ask anybody around you. They are all studying outside Bangalore and Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, etc. God-forsaken places. God-forsaken places. God-forsaken institutions. There is no hospital there. See, leave these things to the private sector. Please leave to the private sector. Lay your hands off it. It will done. And as you said, our money is all going for paying these bureaucrats who are only stumbling blocks. If you go to a government office, first thing is, what is there, how can reject this proposal? Why? Because he is thinking is only that. What is there, how can reject it? He is thinking is only that. You go to any office. And you say you have to bribe people, etc. They take bribes only to speed up their work. They will not give you anything extra. Something which should have been done by them in one day, they usually say, come after 3 months. But if you have come money, please do it in 3 days. That is the bribe you pay. They won't change anything like that and then, nothing. It's just, we call it speed money. Just speed money to speed the work which they are paid for. And the general thing, you go to a government office, they'll say, the person who is dealing with this is not here. He is coming only after 10 days. He's gone for some maternity leave, something. You come after 1 month. What is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? You should actually have something to say. If they did something like that in Panchayat, etc., that if you give a plan or something, if it doesn't come in 7 days, it is seen as approved. They will never agree to that. All these fellows' job will go. Okay, so by putting the final point, education is a good sector for India. Kerala, people are all bright. Give them good quality technical education. Good, not the general education. If you give general education, you are making them unemployable. They will never go for another job. And something wrong with us also. We consider some jobs as lower status. Oh, he is a barber. Barbers make such a lot of money. He is not educated. He is you see the amount of money you spend for this, the place in what should we say, beauty parlor. But then he is a barber. Everybody wants a government job, but technically educate them. Our people, we should also give the dignity of labor. Dignity of labor, which is something which we are also not. We are putting as persons. We are also putting it down. If you give the dignity of labor, people will be prepared to take such jobs. Otherwise, they all want government jobs. My point, maybe.
Understood. I think a very pertinent point on skilling, the government part out, and also on greater participation of private sector in education, as well as being employment focused in education. Thank you. Very, very insightful points. Mr. Mridul Saggar, if you could also give us your thoughts. And then we'll open up to questions.
You want me to add to the melancholy mood, I will do that. in very short, I think it's a very serious matter. The state is sitting on basically a time bomb, I would say, of debt. And basically lots of hidden debt raised by the SPVs through the PSUs. And that has to be really addressed in a very transparent and forthright manner if you really want to solve it. And I had a VC with Balagopal on the issues. He wanted some suggestion. I very frankly told him that if RBI withdraws automatic debit mechanism, states like Kerala would collapse the next day. So it's a serious matter where you really need to do fiscal reforms on the states. And it's sad to see that ministers come, work for 6 months, go, bring the staff, they become pensionable. It's sad to see short-term appointments, 3 years, 4 years being pensionable jobs. You're just adding to the liabilities in the state. I mean, is the state really going to liberalize economy at some stage or live on remittances forever? What happens if remittances just blow up someday? If oil has a substitute, if something has been there, then what are you going to do in the state? So that's my, today there is an opportunity. There is a lot of green funds, green investment coming in, and Kerala could tap a large source out of those green finance and generate new sources of revenue, change its sort of production model. And so I leave these thoughts. I think I don't need to probably go deeper into.
Yesterday, I said I was with the Securities Exchange Board of India. He opened the remark by saying that we need to have debts, etc. Then he said, they have now, SEBI has given approval for, municipal debt, or municipal debt. I asked, I did not know that the municipalities can issue bonds, municipal bonds. He said, no, there are 15 municipalities or maybe your corporations in India which has issued. I said, I have not heard about it. Then I said, there is nearer home, I said, there is a corporation in Kochi. They are starved of funds. They don't have funds even to repair a road. And how can they borrow? How can they borrow? He said, there are 15 good corporations or municipalities all over India who have borrowed. And I asked, have they ever repaid? He said, the first one is 10 years old, they have repaid. So that means they have taken their own money, they have repaid also. I was just thinking, why the corporations or municipalities here are starving? Because they should come up. I think in Europe, in America, etc., all the cities, corporations, they borrow to the hilt, but they are able to pay back also. Here, the revenue source for the corporation is curtailed by the Kerala government. Kerala government will not give them the revenue source. That's it. So there is no revenue source for them. They have only some small revenue and big salary paid. So I think here also leave it to even the corporations, even the municipalities. They are not free to do anything. They are not free. My point again, leave more to market forces, leave more to private sector. That's it.
Thank you, sir. I think stirring up comments, so to say, and very, very insightful. Maybe this is a good time to open it up to the audience for questions.
Good morning, everyone. My question is to Mr. Alexander, sir. So, in one of your opening comments, you mentioned that the retail participation in the debt market is very minimal. It could be because of unclear taxation policies, or it could be because of unclear taxation policies and lower incentives for the retailers. But recently, some of the new age firms like PhonePe and all, they came up with BNPL schemes to revive the market and help a lot of people who want lower credit. But since RBI put a ban on that, even the retail participation has come down in that segment of the debt market as well. So what are your thoughts on BNPL schemes reviving the debt market?
BNPL is buy now, pay later. That's what everybody wants to do. I want to buy now and pay later. Even without a BNPL scheme, we are always thinking of buying now and paying later, or not pay later. Anyway, BNPL is actually something like you buy now, that's again spurring credit only. So I think one suggestion which we had is today, not only Kerala, all of India, people are not getting the credit limit. That means if an average person without some good credit score, etc., which is there, nobody has a good credit score, especially the people in the lower, the middle class and lower middle class. If they want a credit, nobody is willing to give. They can't get a credit card. That's the biggest problem. But then, I think there is a suggestion which we are also trying to implement. Most of these people have gold with them. If they actually give the gold to, to take it as, if they gold to the NBFC, we can actually, if they give gold worth 1 lakh or 50,000, which is there every house, we can actually give them a credit facility for 1 lakh rupees. They can actually spend money there. The biggest advantage is instead of borrowing 1 lakh and keeping that money at home, if it is a credit card, they can pay only when they use the credit. That's maybe they have a credit limit. You need to pay only when they use the credit. So probably they go for some purchase, maybe purchasing a phone, purchasing something. They pay that money only for that. Then the question came is whether we should be able to give credit cards to all these people keeping the gold. Then now the UPI payments have come. That is much more simpler. You don't need to have credit cards, etc. You don't need to have a credit card. You can actually enable this through UPI. See, if you do it through the UPI credit link, it is much more simpler. And the biggest advantage is that people will have something to go by, a credit facility. And once you have a credit facility and you are building that, then your credit score also will go up, and probably after some time you will be able to get a credit card or credit facility without giving the gold also. Now you have demonstrated your repayment habits, then probably the credit score, etc. should go up. So this is something which is definitely good, not only simply for buy now, pay later, for any other consumption, again putting more money in the hands of people, and also creating a sense of financial discipline in people. So when you have this credit bureau and reports, etc., the credit disciplines also go up, because he needs to pay on time. If he repays on time, he builds up his credit score. I think that's a good one, but buy now, pay later. And if it is linked through the UPI instead of the credit card, it will be much simpler, because UPI, the charges are much lesser. It's Kerala, it's India government's facility. If you go through a credit card, there is much more fees, etc., which finally the customer will have to bear, or the borrower will have to bear. So UPI linked credit card is something which a good suggestion, which we have also trying to put up before the regulator.
One question I have is with Vijayakumar sir. This is regarding the dividend tax. Even you are saying like the double taxation that is happening on the dividend. That is happening in every country, I believe. If it's a company, when they pay the dividend, of course the shareholder has to pay tax again. But when we think of the computer tax in India, the corporate pays at least 25% tax on their income. Then further the individual, they are paying in their slab rate. 5 years back, there was no tax on dividend. Then it was only 10% tax on the dividend. Now it's paying on their slab rate. So for example, if a person is earning more than 10 lakhs, their slab rate is 30%. So when we compute, the effective tax will be around 50%. The company gets a profit of 100 rupees. The company pays 25 rupees as tax. Then that balance 75% is the distribute as dividend, then the individual who is receiving it has to pay tax at the rate of 30%. So effective tax will comes around 50%. Is it a right way to do? In countries like US, there is a qualifying dividend, whereas the rate of tax is capped at the rate of capital gain tax. Should we think of changes like that?
Well, the situation was worse. Before the introduction of this dividend tax on individuals, we had the dividend distribution tax, but the companies were taxed on the payment of dividend. The companies had to pay that, right? Even though dividends were exempt from taxation at the taxpayer level. Now there is no dividend distribution tax. Well, all of us will be happy as investors if double taxation, the so-called double taxation is avoided. But what I am trying to say is our tax to GDP ratio is low, it is improving. We need more taxes. Government should have more revenue, particularly for funding our massive infrastructure requirements and also for the other social sector expenditure which the government is incurring in a big way. And from that perspective, particularly when you have this advantage in long-term capital gains tax. Actually, Warren Buffett was complaining that he is paying less tax than his secretary because of the advantage in long-term capital gains tax. In India also, Narendra Murthy of Infosys was in favor of higher taxation, right? Therefore, what prevails now with 1 lakh exemption for long-term capital gains tax, it can be used very judiciously. Let me give you a personal example. I have 4 demat accounts, my own demat account, my wife's and my 2 daughters, right? I manage that, the investment part. Now in all these 4 demat accounts, I can book 1 lakh long-term capital gains, right? If you had started investing long back, as I started, then there will be always long-term capital gains. So you can book 1 lakh long-term capital gains in all these 4 accounts. So the family gets 4 lakh long-term capital gains completely free, right? And even beyond that, if I am booking more long-term capital gains tax, I am paying 30% income tax, but then my taxation will be only 10%. So even though I am a market participant, I would say that the tax system, as far as the market is concerned, is fair now. That's the point.
Just add some history to this also. Today we are saying 50% tax. At one point of time, the taxation rate was so high. When I was studying for my BCom, that is in 1975, the income tax rate, they call it super tax. Super tax was 85% plus 10% surcharge. So you pay 93% road tax. I don't know why people did not evade tax at that time. Who wants to pay 93% tax? People did. Okay, so it started coming down only from after the emergency or some 75. It came down to 85%, came down to 65, 75, then to 60, then to 50, then to 40. Then we remained there. Now about your dividend tax. Dividend tax was actually fine. The company paid 25% tax. After that, when dividend is distributed, they used to pay 20% tax. After that, no tax for anybody. Today, the 20% is not there. 25% company pays. Whatever is paid as dividend, each individual pays. Now it is more equitable because maybe affluent people or wealthy people will have to pay high tax. Not wealthy, ordinary fellow, he will not have to pay any tax. So for him the dividend is free. So it is more socialistic or maybe socialistic tax. Personally, we are connected. We are definitely at a disadvantage because whatever dividend I get, I have to pay super tax on that. Company also pays, I also pay. Exactly what you said. The moral of the story, don't pay dividend. Don't pay dividend. Retain it in the company and use it for the company's growth. Don't pay dividend. Whenever the promoter wants money, sell some shares in the long term capital gain, you said 10%. Sell shares, pay only 10%. Take dividend, pay 50%. So which makes sense, I don't know.
Questions?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your valuable input, sir. One of the questions that I want to ask to George Alexander, sir, regarding your comments on the education, the quality education in Kerala needs to be handed over to the private sector, and the government should give that space to the private sector to provide quality education. So one question that I wanted to ask here is like, so being a salaried middle class person who pays tax.
Just one correction. I didn't say leave all the higher education should be with the government. You other educations which is with the private sector, leave it to them. The government should certainly have their own institutions, real good institutions, 100% they should have. But don't interfere in the private sector. That's what I said. Not that only private sector should do. No, sorry, you misunderstood or I communicated wrongly. No.
Yeah. So basically I was like asking like, so being in the when the private institutions come up more, they will be a profit minded and they will be their ROI or the intention would be to make profits. But being a tax paying citizens, we expect the government to see the current input is only 3% of the GDP is actually going into the public education, right? So we expect more from the government to add more to the quality education, right? Even if we compare with the Western countries. So what they are getting is, and the migration is happening because there is a lot of scholarship and quality educations coming into the public sector itself, public education itself. So how do you actually think that can be managed, be getting that quality and also at some lower rate? So how do you think that that can be achieved in a state like Kerala or from an India perspective?
India should have quality education at the government. The government's colleges should definitely be there. Definitely they should be there. They should be able to give free, subsidized education, free education to poor people, to people who can't afford. But leave something to the private sector also to do. Let them also compete with the government sector. Government sector, the fees is nominal. Private sector, the fees is high. Let them compete. Let them compete.
Hi sir, thank you for your valuable inputs. I've got two questions. First is to Mr. George sir. In the state of Kerala, the layman, the commons have got a lot of investments in gold. So right now the price of gold is already at a skyrocketing level, and when we are expecting US to reduce their interest rate in this year itself at least once. So what's your view on savings in gold, or can you give a general view on that?
Gold is one commodity which doesn't depreciate. If you buy a car, if you take it out from the showroom, you will lose 20%. You take a car for 25 lakhs, 2 days after the showroom, you give it back to them, you will get 25% less. Gold, you will get definitely better. It's definitely a long-term investment. Maybe the equity people may not agree to that. They may not agree to that, but gold is definitely a stable investment. Over the period of 5, 10, 15 years, there is always a 5-10% delta on that. That's definitely there. So savings, instead of spending everything, a part of it in savings is very good. Now today, as you say, gold price has gone up. Probably after some time it may plateau, but it will not come down. The gold will not let you down. It will be there. The biggest advantage in gold is you will not spend it quickly. That will be there for some time. That's the only, what should I say, not an economic advantage or a practical advantage. If you invest in gold, it will be there. If you invest in a deposit or maybe a mutual fund or a share, you tend to sell it and bulk it. That's all. The price of gold, I think, with all these geopolitical tensions all over the world, something will be there always. Something will be there always. Somebody will put some bombs there, somebody will do something. All the time, whenever there is tensions, gold is a stable asset. So invest part of it. That's it.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Mr. Vijayakumar, sir. Sir, recently we have noticed that millennials, especially millennials, are participating a lot in futures and options segment, and retailers are already in loss. And whenever we start our trading portal, we always see their warning message from SEBI that. So what's your view on that? And recently there is a rumor that there may be high taxation on F&O segment, just like what we have done for the cryptocurrencies. So would like to hear your view on that.
Well, my view on this is very clear. The youngsters particularly who have entered the market after the COVID lockdown. The total demat accounts in April 2020 was 4.09 crores. Now it is 15.8 crores. There has been an explosive growth in the number of demat accounts. And part of the new investors are doing the right thing by investing in the mutual funds through systematic investment plans. Last month, the SIP investment crossed 20,000 crores. That's the right thing to do. But the segment of the retail investors, I won't call them investors, traders are dabbling in the market and 90% of them are losing money. That's why the SEBI is sending this message. We also did a research in our own organization. SEBI has been saying that 90% of the traders or retail traders are losing money. Our own experience is that 95% are losing money and huge amount, right? Huge amount of money, because there are two emotions in the market, two extreme emotions. One is fear, the other is greed. And to be a successful investor, you have to control both these emotions. So I am completely in favor of regulating this by taxing it, particularly the speculative part. Actually, the F&O trade in India is higher than the total F&O trade in the United States of America, where their market cap is around $55 trillion, whereas our market cap is $5 trillion. So there's a lot of gambling going on. And from that perspective, this is not a capital market, this is a capitalizing market, which has to be discouraged. I believe the government will do something about that. There will be some taxation in this segment to discourage that. That is necessary to protect the financial health of the youngsters who are rushing into this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And let me just add one point regarding the gold. I agree with you. You should not be going scot-free in that. Gold is a safe haven asset class. As you are right in saying that gold is a stable asset class. And we also say in our financial planning classes and lectures that 5% of your total investable funds can go up to 10% depending upon your risk profile, should be in gold, not in gold ornaments. Gold ornaments, it will depreciate. You buy a gold ornament at 10 o'clock in the morning and sell it at 11 o'clock after 1 hour, you lose 10 to 12% making charge and all that. So there is depreciation in that. Unless you buy gold ETFs or electronic mode of gold, that is fine, or the sovereign gold bond scheme where you get some 2.5% return also. But if you take the last 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, 20 year, 25 year, 30 year return on various asset classes, including gold, public provident fund, bank deposits, everything, stocks have beaten all other asset classes all these years. But in the short run, 1 year, 2 year, it may not happen. In 1 year or 2 years, there can be even negative returns. But in the long run, it will always outperform all other asset classes. Therefore, our advice to youngsters would be to put more money in this performing asset class, because that is also contributing to the capital formation of the economy. It helps the economy, whereas I will just give you in 1 minute a very simple example. When my niece got married in 1996, as the only uncle, my mother asked me to give her some 4 bangles and 1 necklace, which I was very reluctant. When my daughter married, I gave her only minimum gold, but I gave her a portfolio of high quality stocks, some of which, like Bajaj Finance, has multiplied 40 times in 12 years. But then nobody will see that it is electronic form, not what John Maynard Keynes called the arrogant yellow metal, which is a barbaric relic. But when my niece got married and I gave this to her in 1996, this necklace and 4 gold bangles, 3 days after that, my sister took it to the Federal Bank locker in Trichy round, and she flew to US within a month. And since 1996, this ornament which I gave him and her parents also gave her are still lying there, right? Completely idle. It is completely idle. It can be monetized as Mr. George is doing, but then it is an idle asset class from the economic perspective. So as an economist, I don't have much of a preference for the work for this arrogant euro method, which is why I never use gold at all. From the economist perspective, it is also damaging to the current account deficit and thereby to the economic growth of India also. I just wanted to play the devil's advocate here. That's why, to make the proceedings interesting. Thank you.
So my question to Mr. Mridul. But my point on this futures and options, personally I am also dead against that. People just lose money. This is just losing money. Losing money. I don't know who is gaining in this. Investor is losing money. No doubt about it. Thank you.
So my question to Mr. Mridul. In the infrastructure space, there has been a lot of spending which has been done by the government, and there is a focus over there. But what can be done to have more private participation in this? Still, it predominantly seems to be a government-focused growth over here. Would like to hear your views on this.
So, absolutely correct what you said. Actually, of late, what we are seeing is that it's essentially getting government-driven. The original PPP models did not work. So basically, first there was sort of overbidding, basically in a race to win projects. Firms were just sort of making abnormal revenue assumptions, not really expecting economic cycles to turn down at any point of time. And then we saw that in the global financial crisis, a lot of infrastructure debt became sticky and turned into huge NPAs. Now, with a lot of construction firms failing as well, basically the model was then not working. And when the pandemic struck, the government actually did probably the right thing at that point of time, because otherwise infrastructure investment would have collapsed and the economic growth would have gone down even more, making debt even more unsustainable, and economy would have been in long-term slow paced cycle. But they took it on themselves and they did make more government capex expenditure, and they encouraged that. And basically also the models of tendering were changed, especially by the NHAI, where risk was taken on the RBI, on the government balance sheet, and not on the private sector balance sheet, in order to attract them to more investment. But this model probably now don't need to run a lot, because economy has recovered and private sector can come into play. In fact, the NHA's debt is risen to bit sort of worrying levels, I would say. So NHA itself would be constrained in sort of running the infrastructure program in times to come. And models need to be rechanged with more private sector participation should be allowed into the thing. Of course, the government will need to still take into account land acquisition risks and environment acquisition risks, because otherwise this model just doesn't function. But the growth still needs to be driven substantially, and we do need infrastructure investment, not necessarily bank funding, but long-term infrastructure funding out of the debt markets, and that's what we should focus on.
Alright, so just a quick time check, right? In the interest of time, we'll take last two questions, and then we can always ask questions during the networking lunch. So can we have the last two questions now, please?
Hi sir, the question to Mridul sir. See, last financial year, the discussion was completely on PSUs and especially on defense sector. So the government is giving huge targets for the PSU defense companies to improve the export and minimize the import. So first question is the government is going to do more allocation for the defense sector in the coming budget? And the second one, does our PSU companies are capable enough to compete with countries like US, Israel, France, etc.?
So, given that the geopolitical situation is turning from bad to worse, probably cutting defense expenditures are not an option at this juncture. Having said that, there are still some options of downsizing a bit of workforce in the armed forces and having a better multiplier based on the modernization of the defense equipment. And that's something we saw China did effectively in a much worse situation than India when Deng Xiaoping, also Deng Zizi, who was the PLA chief. So he was the one who actually cut down the PLA workforce to almost a fifth of what it was. Massive restructuring, and made army more effective by having better equipment and more force multiplier, what we call in strategic studies. The force multiplier has to increase there. And I think we need to pay attention to that, because in Indian defense budgets also, a lot of it goes for the manpower. I mean, it crowds away capital investments in the defense and stuff. About the balance between domestic production and production from abroad, it depends on case-to-case basis. So, I mean, we don't want basically sort of investments into projects which have long gestations and don't fructify. So there is this typical case of a lot of aircraft projects in Europe, in France, the Airbus, the Concorde, what we come to know, what is called the Concorde fallacy in public choice theory. The Concorde fallacy is about you believed it will provide you, the substitute kept on dumping more because you've already sunk money and finally the project fails. So we need to avoid those kind of projects, but definitely there is scope for some indigenization which we could tap. Generally, on a larger plane, not just for defense sector, I am a firm believer that we should make our private sector competitive and not protect them unduly, which of late I am seeing our trade policies is shifting more protectionist, which is not good for the country at all, which won't really make our manufacturing competitive. See, already we are not competitive, and then we add to the protection. That's not the way to grow. So we need to have a more competitive setup.
Hi sir. So just one question about the savings part. As of now, government is forcing away for the more number of saving tactics what we have used from several thousand years of practice. So will it be helpful for long run, or this type of budgets what we are getting nowadays will help us to be perform good in the tough conditions?
Didn't get the question correctly.
Okay. So
to whom are you addressing the question?
Anybody can
Okay.
answer, because maybe all of three I want to be here.
Okay, what's your question?
My question was my question about the saving tactics what we have practiced for the thousands years till the moment, but nowadays government is pulling away. We should not put more things into the saving accounts or put the things on saving. We need to go for purchase. If government will do the same thing for the long run, if tough time will come, so it will support us.
Did you get the question?
Probably deposit on the bank.
Deposit type of question.
Government is not encouraging savings in the banks.
Yes.
That's the question?
Yes.
Well, first I will give you my brief response to that. Mridul is a better expert in that, so he will give you perhaps a detailed answer. Well, interest rates have been coming down. It will come down again because globally we are moving towards lower inflation. Inflation has come down, not at the expected level, but to 2% in UK, 2.6% in the US, and the US Central Bank Fed is expected to cut rates perhaps by 25 basis points this year and 4 rate cuts next year. RBI also will follow suit because our inflation, even though food inflation is a worry, CPI inflation is under control. The interest rates will again come down, and when interest rates come down, savers of course certainly will lose, but then the cost of capital in the economy also will come down. Private sector can borrow at the lower rates, and when the bond yields come down, the government's cost of money also will come down. So both these are beneficial to the economy, lowering the government's cost of funds and also lowering the corporate's cost of funds. From the individual saver's perspective, of course, this is a price that the savers have to pay.
So, I completely agree. Maybe I'll add one perspective to his thoughts. See, portfolio choices for a household are his decision. So the government should not really tax very much differentially to different assets and let people choose the risk-return trade-off for the portfolio they have. Now, deposits anyway were not unduly taxed. Maybe they were sort of facing a competition because mutual funds were getting added tax advantage, especially on the debt side, which the government now has corrected that. So it's no longer an issue. So I don't know whether we should actually try to encourage more deposit saving or allow disintermediation in the markets to take place. If markets are able to disintermediate without banks and make the financial system more efficient, so be it. We don't need to be unduly protected upon banks. We were the bank-dominated economy for long, but the transition is already occurring. So let that process happen on its own.
Hello sir. So I wanted to ask on the questions of unemployment, and probably both Vijay sir and Mridul sir can answer that. So as we know that India economy is really growing fast, 7 to 8%. Even the last couple of years has been really good for India in terms of the investment and the manufacturing industry growing, production is growing. So what is the reason the unemployment problem we are not able to solve, and what could be the possible solution? Probably government can bring those reforms to solve this problem.
I'm told that we have exceeded the limit, so I'll be very, very brief in my comments. We've discussed this unemployment issue as a big challenge that the Indian economy is facing now. As you said, growth is good, macros are good, except the debt part. But then we have to create employment opportunities, and the government also is addressing the problem by encouraging labor intensive. We discussed this PM Awas Yojana, where 3 crore houses are going to be constructed. That is labor intensive, that will create a lot of jobs. But we need to shift more people from agriculture to industry and also to services. That is happening, but we don't have a magic wand to create lots of jobs in the very short run.
In the interest of time, I'll let it pass because I don't think our unemployment rates are extraordinarily high. There is a problem of stress in some sectors and some areas and stuff, which require obviously more micro policies and stuff and long-term.
Is it the ease of doing business is the problem? There's some change needed.
So, but we have improved a lot on ease of business ranking. But yes, we still have miles to go. I don't think we have a single window clearance the way the Singapore, for instance, function. We have this problem of approvals at subnational levels plus the central levels and all. I think it's high time the government do governance reforms, which should allow very quick decisions on investment. At one place, people can gather and give clearances, whether they belong to state government, center government, let the businesses function much better. and that's what is necessary basically to have long-run growth improvement, potential growth can improve. We can then think of Viksit Bharat or whatever. We need governance reforms, good institutions, good law, good practices.
I think that's a very apt summary comment to kind of close the session. Thank you very much for your questions. Very good situation from a country standpoint. GDP at 4 trillion, growing at 7 to 8%. All macro factors looking good, but yet fair amount of challenges to solve. I think unemployment came back again towards the end of the conversation. Infrastructure thrust while keeping public spending in control, encouraging private spending, yet also while public spending happens, keeping fiscal deficit in check, right? Are some of the key things that will need to be focused on as this budget comes out. But hopefully a government with the third term stability on the cabinet being roughly the same, all of that will contribute to a good budget which will help us get to the 2047 goal of Viksit Bharat. With that, I come to a close. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all our panelists, moderator, and you wonderful audience for such an engaging session. It was definitely an insightful discussion. Now, as we approach the end of today's session, we want to thank all our speakers, panelists, and our audience for making this event a huge success. We hope you found the discussions insightful and are leaving with a better understanding of the upcoming budget. I would now like to invite Professor Anjana ma'am for presenting the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for putting me in the unenviable position of being between you and lunch. So I will make this quick. I'm not an economist, but George Alexander said, today I learned one thing about my career as I listened to you. I have been employed in the private sector for about 15 years prior to being here. I was very proud of my tenure. Today I learned that probably all my Malayali friends thought I might have been unemployed the whole time. But I have redeemed myself. I'm in a government job now. So ladies and gentlemen, my sincere gratitude to each of you on behalf of IIM Kochi campus for your participation and insightful contributions in our discussion today. First of all, deep appreciation to our speakers, Mr. Dharmakirti Joshi, the Chief Economist at CRISIL, Mr. George Alexander Muthoot, of course, Dr. V.K Vijayakumar, and of course, Professor Mridul Saggar. And Mr. Nitin Nair, thank you for moderating this panel. Your expertise and profound knowledge has given all of us valuable insights into the forthcoming budget and its potential implications. This session was not only informative, I saw many questions coming even after the time limit, but it was clearly enriching our understanding of our economic landscape and financial projections. I'd also like to thank our Director of IIM Kozhikode, other faculty members and staff for their support throughout this program. Thank you once again to the audience for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. A special mention also to the organizing team for conducting a fantastic event. The PR cell at IIM Kozhikode, which has been giving publicity to this event both through traditional and online media for quite a while and has raised substantial public interest in this conversation. And all other support staff whose diligent efforts behind the scenes has ensured the seamless execution of this event. Thank you for your dedication. Finally, my gratitude to all our sponsors and partners for your generous contribution and support to this fantastic discussion. I hope you took away some fantastic insights from this. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. All right, so as we draw close to the session, once again, I would like to thank all our sponsors, our golden sponsors, Vega Land, and our silver sponsor, Sri Roche Homes for Common Infotech and South Indian Bank. So thank you so much, everybody. Let's now break for lunch and leverage this opportunity to network with the fellow attendees. And in the meanwhile, we'll also see how Vigaland is contributing towards the community by running their beautiful and very well set up Chitila Pille Park. So thank you so much.